You know, we've all heard the stories about the miracles of Jesus, but what if they weren't just about healing a person here or there? Today, we're diving into a really fascinating argument that these acts were actually a direct confrontation with sickness, suffering, and death itself. So you have to ask, right? Were these events just raw displays of supernatural power? Just a way to prove a point? Or was there something much, much deeper going on? Well, to explore that question, we're going to lean on the work of theologian Dr. Robert C. Newman. He makes the case that these miracles weren't just about fixing individual problems. He actually sees them as a direct and pretty profound challenge to the very reality of sickness and death as we know it. And to really get our heads around his arguments, we're going to break down three key case studies that he analyzes: the healing of a nobleman's son, a paralyzed man, and finally, a man who was born blind.
Okay, so our first case study. This is a story that really hinges on this idea of having faith, even from a great distance.
So, let's set the scene. You've got this desperate father, a royal official, who travels something like 20 miles to find Jesus. Why? Because his son is back home in Capernaum, dying from a fever, and he's just begging Jesus, please come with me before it's too late. But here's the thing. Jesus doesn't go with him. He just says this. A simple command and a promise. And that puts the father in this critical spot. Does he argue? Does he insist Jesus come see his son? Or does he take him at his word and trust that this is enough? And this is where Newman points out a few details he sees as grounding the story in reality. First, the geography checks out. The father asks Jesus to come down, and sure enough, Cana is at a higher elevation than Capernaum. But the real kicker is the timing. As the father is heading home, his servants meet him on the road and tell him the fever broke at the exact hour Jesus had spoken to him. And for Newman, that independent verification is the whole turning point for this man's faith. So that first case was all about trusting a promise. This next one, though, this one is about what happens when a miracle becomes less about healing and more about challenging authority head-on. Picture this. A house is so jam-packed with people that a paralyzed man has to be lowered down through the roof to get to Jesus. But instead of just healing him, the first thing Jesus says is this: not you're healed, but your sins are forgiven. So, why on earth would that one little phrase cause such an uproar? I mean, to our ears today, it might sound comforting, but for the religious leaders in that room, it was something else entirely. And here's the conflict in a nutshell. The scribes immediately think that's blasphemy. Only God can forgive sins. So Jesus basically lays down a challenge. He asks, which is easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or get up and walk? See, anyone can say the first one, but the second one, that has immediate, visible proof. So according to Newman, the physical healing was offered as tangible evidence of his authority to grant the spiritual forgiveness he'd already claimed. All right, so we've looked at a miracle of faith and a miracle of authority. This last case study we're going to look at combines both, and it escalates from just a simple healing into this full-blown spiritual and political showdown. Yeah, this isn't just a quick event, it's a whole drama. A man born blind is healed on the Sabbath. And that right there immediately causes a problem. So the religious leaders, they launch this full-scale investigation, questioning the man, his parents, everybody. And the healed man's simple, honest testimony just makes them angrier and angrier, until they literally throw him out of the synagogue for refusing to denounce Jesus. And right in the middle of all this intense theological debate and threats, the man just cuts through all the noise with this. He doesn't pretend to be a scholar. He's not trying to argue theology. He just states his reality. And this simple, powerful statement becomes the unshakable truth at the center of the whole story. But Newman points our attention to an action that might seem a little strange. I mean, why didn't Jesus just say a word like before? Why did he spit on the ground, make clay, and put it on the man's eyes? Well, Newman argues that this specific act is the symbolic key to the entire event. The answer, according to Newman, is all wrapped up in a single Hebrew word, yatsar. It means to form or to mold, like a potter working with clay. But here's the crucial part. It is the exact same verb used in the book of Genesis to describe God forming Adam from the dust of the earth. So, by making clay to restore the man's sight, Jesus wasn't just healing, he was symbolically reenacting the very moment of creation. It was a profound claim to creative power. So, let's zoom out. What's the big picture here? According to Newman's analysis, what do all of these different miracles ultimately point toward?
Well, Newman argues it's a twofold thing. First, the miracles look backward. They're like a symbolic reversal of all the decay and suffering in the world. But they also look forward. They're kind of like a movie trailer, a sneak peek of a promised future restoration, a time when, as the texts say, sickness and death will be no more.
And that kind of leaves us with this final thought. If these events are more than just historical stories, if they are, in fact, signs, as they're so often called, then maybe the most important question isn't just if they happened, but what exactly they were, and maybe still are, pointing to.